And so we should be recording now. Welcome to this special event that's being co-hosted by 4 island groups. I'm going to start by acknowledging that although we're meeting virtually, we are doing so from the traditional territory of the Nanaimo First Nation of the Coast Salish people, who have been the guardians of this land and these waters for countless generations. And so we want to honor and acknowledge that history and tradition, especially today, being Earth Day. And so with those 2 introductory points, I will describe a little bit of what's going to happen through the event, and then we'll get started. We have a 2-part event here, but we want to keep this this session to about an hour. So whether we'll be able to get to the second part is a bit of a question, but we'll be flexible on that. The first part, we're very happy to welcome Constable Gary O'Brien, the Media Relations Officer for the Nanaimo RCMP detachment, and you see his name up there on the screen. He has a presentation for us and dealing with policing in Nanaimo, and more particularly issues on Protection Island. And we will have the everyone muted during the presentation. And because of the numbers that are joining, what we are asking is that you use the chat feature to place any questions or comments that you may have during the presentation. Peter will be monitoring the chat as we go, as will I. And that way we'll be able to capture everybody's thoughts and be able to consolidate the questions together a little bit as it makes sense to be as efficient as we can with our time. So the chat feature is your avenue to get questions forward, and we'll be posing those in a Q&A with Gary at the end of his session. If we get to the second part is much more focused on the island, and we will have a bit of a conversation about how things work on the island, the roles of groups, and what our next steps may be as a result of what we hear right now. So more about that as we get to that point in the event. So with that, I will mute myself and turn things over to Gary to do his presentation. And again, any questions or comments along the way, please put them in the chat and we'll be able to capture those. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Will you monitor the chat just temporarily?
Sure, I can do that.
Thank you. Okay, Gary, I think we're good to go. You'll have to unmute yourself, Gary.
There you go. Good. Okay, well, thank you for inviting me. I love talking to you guys because the island is a beautiful place. There are so many beautiful islands scattered through the CLEC. As you note that I put my email address, my phone number, and my cell phone. It's public information. It's on every news release that we put out. So if you have a question you don't want to share with the group, or you want to contact me about something else, please feel welcome to contact me privately. Today we're going to do a little bit of a rehash of what we talked about last time, and I've just added a few more points. And again, questions, put them off to the side, and I will try to address them. If I haven't got an answer, I will get an answer for you. Okay. So Peter is my Vanna White today. There he goes. He's doing a very good job. So the island is beautiful, as you know, but there's things that you have to consider when you move to an island. Is the response time is one thing that we're looking at. It's not the same as if you live in Nanaimo. You are a part of the city of Nanaimo. You have the same services. You have the same afforded the same protection through fire and policing, but it's not the same. It's very similar as far as response time to if you lived in the south end of our jurisdiction, which is down in Cedar by the Sea or by the harbor. It's comparable, and that would be a code 3 situation. So next slide. Yeah, sorry. So I'll get, there's a picture I was going to show. But the points we're going to look at is, I've updated this a little bit, but we're looking at unauthorized camping on the island, what we can do about it, how it's impacting on you, where people can actually camp. The theft, we'll talk about, is it a real issue? It's an issue if you have things stolen from you. That's what it comes down to. Theft from your area, private theft or public space. And one of the issues we're looking at is assaults. Are they prevalent? Do they happen? Home invasions, very scary. That's the thing that newspapers love to pick up on and they report on. What happens if there is a home invasion? And what constitutes a home invasion? There's some very practical components of keeping yourself safe through that. And lots of questions, a couple thoughts for discussion, always a Q&A at the end. So not a lot of calls last year, 48 calls for service in all of 2020. So that's about 4 a month. And of course, it picks up in the summer. Majority of those calls are from May to August. And so if you look at the constitutes criminal code calls, threat, assault, theft, break and enter. Now, that's what it's classified as, and we respond to. But the world of policing is such that we go to a call and it's never exactly what we're responding to. It may be classified as a break and enter, but it could be as simple as a theft from a residence. But there have been incidents where people have gone into cabins. We get that all the time. And you have to be aware of that because you're living in an isolated community, that there will be, people will take advantage of that. So the other ones, they go accordingly. What we're seeing now, you only had 2 mental health calls. We expect those numbers to increase significantly because right now in Nanaimo proper, we're averaging about 400 a month. So that was 2 for you in 2020. I wouldn't be surprised if your numbers jump to 10, maybe even 20 over the summer as people move away from urban areas. A lot of people with mental health issues, they're trying to find places where they can assimilate, they can kind of mold into the background, and an island is the perfect example for that. These are the people you probably find sleeping in your parks often. There's ways that you can deal with it safely, and we want to help you with that also. And yeah, next one. So, Peter, did you get my updated PowerPoint that I sent over this morning?
This is it, as far as I know.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, it's pretty close anyways. So the 911 non-emergency, very important that people educate themselves on this. 911 is you drop everything, we go code 3, we get there as fast as we can. It's a crime in progress. It's a life or death situation. Please fire an ambulance. Please, crime in progress, somebody's life is being threatened. Fire, house is burning down. Ambulance, someone's having a jammer. We got to get there quick. So that's why when our dispatchers, we only have 6 dedicated 911 operators on all of Vancouver Island. They, when people call in, they ask the hard questions because they are dedicating a line to take your questions. And 80% of those calls, and that's over the last 40 years, are not emergencies. It's a theft that may have happened, or somebody hears a bump in the night and they're scared. Ask yourself, do you have validation? Do you have enough to tell this person, we need emergency services here right now? And if you don't, then you have to address, okay, how are we going to deal with the situation? Am I at risk, or can it wait to the morning? Is it a non-emergency call? And the non-emergency calls are also 24/7. Don't get me wrong, but they have a lesser response. We prioritize our calls from priority 1 to priority 5. Priority 1 is lights and sirens, get there as quick as we can. Priority 5 is theft of a flower pot, and it's gone missing in the last 3 days. Does it require police attendance? No. Do you want to report for information? Yes. So, and you can get a file number in the event that you see somebody or you find your flower pot down the road. So that's what we have to look at. Our harbor patrol vessel, next one, Peter, is what we're using. Currently, it's out of service. It did not pass sea trials. Big investment to get a new one. We are certainly looking at that. What it's going to cost? Can we get a replacement vessel? But in the interim, for us to get to the island, we will rely on the harbor patrol vessel. They are available 24/7. Their rally time, they can be ready to go with us in it in about 15 or 20 minutes. So we are pleasantly pleased with that. And there's been a lot of situations of a 911 that we can get there on site and addressing an issue in about 45 minutes. And that's pretty quick. That's understanding availability of police officers, assessing the call. The weather is a huge factor, but there have been situations that we can get there in 45. Sometimes it takes longer. Why it takes longer? Because we live on an island, right? And that's the reality. But very seldom, there are other ways we talk about. We can commandant personal vehicles and whatnot, but no, it's not going to happen. Question. I'll answer that question after. There's something here about a police car. But yeah, it seems to be working. The Harbor Patrol provides an excellent service. And the key to using that instead of the Coast Guard is available. It takes a little longer, but we are not allowed to transport prisoners on the Coast Guard vessel, only on the Harbor Patrol. So that's another reason we have to go over if somebody has to leave. We've gone to a domestic assault where somebody's whacked their wife and they're going to jail. We got to make sure that we can get that person back safely as well. So that's another reason, added advantage, why we use their vessel. Great relationship. And but the main thing, we want to get our own vessel. We want to get it back in the water. We recognize it's a priority for the detachment, and we have to figure out how we're going to do it. Get a new one, replace it, whatever it is, but it's going to get done. Next one. So unauthorized camping, it's subject to the same bylaws as the city of Nanaimo. And the Supreme Court of BC decreed that because there aren't enough suitable housing areas for people, you have to make available campsites. And these campsites, you can go in by 7 p.m. You have to be out by 9 o'clock the next morning, and they are designated. And I provided, I think last time, a list of designated spots where people can camp on Protection Island. But there are restrictions to it. And the same restrictions apply to your parks as they do in Nanaimo, because they have to be so many meters back from eating facilities or playgrounds or washrooms or recreational facilities. And that only makes perfect sense. But they have to be out. And the issue that you're being addressed with is very difficult. If somebody's in there and all of a sudden, well, I really like this spot, and 9 o'clock in the morning and you see the camp is still there, how are we going to get them out? So that's where we have to get our bylaw officers involved. They have to come back and they will address that issue. It's a little slower. It's a little more time consuming, but the same rules do apply. This is a significant issue in Nanaimo. We're finding it's almost nonstop now, the impact on our frontline officers and the bylaw officers in moving people through parks and ensuring that there's not significant clutter happening. And you can only imagine where a lot of people who are camping are homeless, significant number have mental health issues, have a real hard time caring for themselves. The personal hygiene is off, or as I said, they have a drug addiction. So our officers are finding feces, we're finding needles, we're finding discarded clothing, diapers for young children at times, fortunately not too often. But these are all terrible things to find in a park. Secondly, they're having an impact on the culture in the park. And that all has to be cleaned up on a daily basis, costing thousands of dollars. And I don't think you're at that situation. I don't think you ever will. But do not be surprised that you start seeing an impact on your parks this summer, because this is where we expect people to go. We have right now about 650 to 700 people have no fixed address, homeless people. We expect the number to swell to about 1,000 this summer, and those people will go to the parks. A lot of them have real social issues, like diagnosed personality disorders where they do not mix well with people. They want to be left alone. what better place than to go to Newcastle Island or Protection Island, deep into the island somewhere where they don't have to see anybody. It's going to happen. So just get ready for it. And I think last time, did I not, Peter? I provide a list of the parks that were designated on protection.
Yeah, I believe what we did is we
can provide that later, but I just wanted to double check with you.
I think we're going to need to get it again from you. We did get a list of the restrictions, but not a list of the parks that are applicable.
Okay, note to self, you won't get it right now, but I'll send it to you after.
Thank you.
Okay, next one. Yeah, so these are the locations. There might be a couple more, but that's the basic idea. So if you see somebody who's violating this, who's not respecting it, okay, we're not asking you to take it upon yourself. But we also know, living on an island, sometimes you approach things differently. And sometimes cooperation is a wonderful tool. It's up to you how you deal with it. But our bylaws, City of Nanaimo bylaws, are there to assist you and facilitate the removal of anybody who's breaching these terms. Yeah, the big carrot, the big stick is they can be charged. Okay, it's a fine. What we do, we realize now and works much better is we work with these people to say why they're there, how long they expect to be there, and we remove them peacefully and safely without having to bring the police officers in to strong arm them out. It's a much better solution for everybody involved. Next one. The who to call, non-emergency line, right? City bylaws, they're available. The bylaw info is a great one because if you get a situation that is happening after hours, the bylaw officers aren't going to come out unless this is exigent circumstances. Exigent circumstances are the only way you can get a bylaw officer over there. For example, if you had a barking dog after hours, they may come, but not unless there's a life or death situation, somebody's been mauled. Send the info to their bylaw line that goes directly to David LaBerge, who's a retired police officer who oversees the bylaw unit. He has 8 bylaw officers, of which most of are former police officers who have served in Nanaimo and know Protection Island and the adjacent islands, and they will assist you. The other one I put in there is new to our office is Josh Waltman. And Josh is our mental health liaison officer. And we can't say enough about him. This is a position we recognize that we needed. I alluded to earlier, 400 mental health calls every month. Josh alone is attending to probably 20% of those. But he goes in plain clothes without uniform, but he has his intervention options. He has his firearm, but he's less threatening to the individuals who are going through a mental health crisis. He responds with a psych nurse, a psychiatric nurse, either through CORE, community outreach groups, or ACT, assertive community care, and they address these people. And they are involved in a significant number of committals under the Mental Health Act. This is really good because if you need advice, if you see somebody, even if it's one of your neighbors, we all go through situations and where our mental health is questionable. And we have a personal crisis that can push somebody over. If you see that, they're willing to assist you on that, give you advice, show up, do an assessment if necessary, or you can email Josh and he'll call you back or whatever. But please don't ignore it. A lot of the homeless we have, about 35%, have significant mental health issues. Then they're coming to your island. It's not when, it's just a matter of time. So please make your stuff, make these resources available to you. Excellent. So thefts are going to happen. Your numbers are down, but the reality is you live on isolated properties. You have to be the frontline defense. Look at your house like a criminal. Okay, what's going to be stolen? Do I lock my doors? And if I don't, why not? Well, I live on an island. I trust the people. I moved here for this reason. That's fine. But if you have thousands of dollars of electronics in your house, yeah, you're right. You have a right not to lock your door. But then the criminals are going to steal them. Doesn't make it right. But you are the one who's only responsible for that. We'll go there and we'll say, what was stolen? How'd they get in? Well, the door was unlocked. Okay, so no forced entry. They didn't have to break a window. And it makes our job a little more difficult to determine who it was, because we're looking for forensic evidence. All they had to do is turn the doorknob, and they probably wore gloves. Think about it that way as well. Think about your neighbors, because these people, if they find one unlocked house, they will continue. They say, well, I found one unlocked one, I'll go to the second one and the third and the fourth. They can clean you guys out, and they'll keep picking and picking and picking until they've exhausted it, then they leave. And what they've done, they've robbed you of the security, the peace and tranquility of living at an island. So don't allow that to happen. The people that we deal with are called prolific offenders, and they commit 90% of the crime on the island. We're talking Vancouver Island, Nanaimo, the Protection Island. And they only make up 10% of all the criminals in Nanaimo. They do 90% of the crime. These are people who do break and enters for life. Curriculum vitae, I do break and enters, and I'm very good at it. I know of personally 5, 10, 15, 20, you name it, of people who will do 40 break and enters a month. Or they'll steal bicycles all day long, or they break into cars, or they do identity theft, or they sell drugs, whatever, or they do shoplifting in stores. These are the hardcore criminals. And if we get one or two of them off the streets, we see a significant reduction in crime in our community. And everybody's going, oh, the police are doing a fantastic job. And they're away for 18 months. All of a sudden, they get out of jail, they serve their time, they come back to Nanaimo, and then they start up again. People said, the police aren't doing anything. Look, crime is out of control. This is what we deal with. It's the ebb and flow of policing. We keep pressuring. It's called intelligence-led policing. We target the people who do most of crime, and we try to get them off the streets. So bear that in mind when you think, it's nothing, but it is something, because we know who's doing it. The other thing is that all our crimes, all our files are electronic. Everything is put on a database. And we need to know what's happening. So if you have a situation where you're having theft from houses or sheds or outbuildings, and all of a sudden Jim talks to Pete, and Pete talks to Marlene, and Marlene talks to her neighbors, you realize, wow, they're all stealing the same thing. They're going in the sheds and stealing our tools, or they're going into our houses and stealing cell phones or wallets. That's probably the same one or two people. But if only one person reports that, we're not seeing a trend. And our criminal analysts look for trends. When we see trends, then we say, we have to do something. We need to address this issue. And we'll do that. If you have a crime situation on the island, we'll work with our bike patrol. We'll work with our GD members. But everybody has to report it to give the pure picture of what's happening, even if it's just for a file number, because we can access that information. So target hardening CPTED principles are great. CPTED means crime prevention through environmental design. And that is how you build something or how you take care of a property will either attract criminals or push them away. One thing, for example, a lot of you, I'm sure, don't turn your lights on at night because you want the privacy. But lighting is good in the sense that your neighbors can see to your property. You can also see the shadows. Your security lights will come on when somebody walks into your property late at night. Gives you the upper hand on who's entering your space. You think about sensor lights or crushed rock around buildings, locking doors, closing your blinds at night so people can't look in. Criminals will often target a place before they break in. What they'll do is simply look through the window. But if your blinds are closed, they don't get that upper hand. A lot of things like that you can do. And then, of course, you have a theft. Well, it's very hard for us to find a bike that's stolen because the criminals are going to spray paint it within 30 minutes. The colors change. But if you've taken a picture of the bike, you've taken a picture of the serial number and provided to the police officers, or you've taken a picture of all the valuables in your home, that's a wonderful tool for us to use. Because we know the criminals will break in and they'll go back to their kayak or canoe and they're off the island in 20 minutes and they're gone. And the chances of you getting your stuff back are less. But if we have that picture, we disseminate it to all the police officers and they can be waiting on the other side with that picture. It's very valuable stuff. I talk about the sharing of information. This is so important on the island. social media block watch, but sharing responsibly. Your Facebook group that somebody talked about earlier, I hope it's kind of password protected and you're allowing only certain people into it. There can be public Facebook groups. There should be a secure invite only Facebook group where you can share information about criminals, because you can have criminals in that site and you don't want to give them the upper hand. So a lot of the Facebook groups throughout Nanaimo, and we got about 16,000 people in the program now, is they are sharing information amongst themselves in a confidential way. They're sharing pictures. Hey, anybody ever seen this guy before? No, I've never seen him before. And somebody in the group pops up 2 days later, because often some people check him. So, oh yeah, that's my cousin's. No, that's my neighbor's son. He's home from university. He's in for a couple weeks. Great, problem solved. But if nobody can identify who this person is, they keep an eye on it and they share it amongst themselves. And that might be somebody who's scoping out properties, because criminals will walk through the streets. Criminals will come to your island on a bike or walk and assess what property they're going to break into. They're going to assess what boats they can steal, what boats are being secured. How am I going to get off the island? When I steal it, where am I going to put that item for a safekeeping? And then how am I going to get off? These are really important things. And you can share that confidentially amongst yourselves. An excellent idea. Next one. So break and enters. That can be very scary for someone. If you think your house has been broken into and you think for some reason, based on your observations or perceptions, that somebody is still in your house, don't go in. Back off. Keep a safe eye on the house to see if somebody leaves, or maybe there's other people, or maybe there's a car idling nearby. Call 911 if you think somebody's still in the house. That would be a 911. That is a crime in progress. If you get to their house and the door is cracked open, you see it's all messed, and you just get a sense there's nobody in the house. Okay, so now I'm going to change my approach a bit because you're on the island. So say for the same thing, you go to the door, the house is arrived, somebody's obviously got in there, you've been broken into. Back off. It could take a while for us to get there. Maybe you came home at 9 or 10 o'clock at night. So there's different things. So living in a rural area, what I would suggest for some people is there's safety in numbers. If you can get a large contingency of people, 2, 3, 4, to approach that property and assess whether the bad guy's still there, do so. That's entirely up to you. It's just a suggestion. I'm not telling you to do that. If you feel it's not safe, you call 911, you wait for the police to arrive. That might take a while. It might be we're in the middle of a storm, if we can't get the harbor vessel out, it might be hours. But if you don't feel it's safe, do not go inside. The other thing is so you want to help with the investigation. So how did they get in? What do you think is missing? Okay, then doing an assessment. Okay, that's missing, that's missing, that's missing. Think about yourself, when you left, when you got back. Any forensic evidence, this thing was touched, that glass is broken, that beer can wasn't here before. We can get prints off a lot of these metallic items. If you see a piece of glass and the weather's changing, maybe you can cover the glass with the tarp so we can get prints off that. Because getting back to prolific offenders, so we have prolific offenders doing 30 to 40 break and enters a month. If we get them for breaking into your place, that's all we need. We may not get them on charges, 40 charges for break and enters, but that one break and enter might be enough to get them off the streets. So don't say, it's nothing. They only took some tools from my shed. These are people who are doing crime all the time. So think about the bigger picture. Next one. So home invasions, like again, if you come into your house and your house is broken into, you come face to face with a criminal. They are not interested in you. And when I say 99.9, that's 90.9999%. They want your goods. They want the money. They want the booze. They want your wallet, something. Because 85% of all crime comes back to dope. And that's what they're doing. So if you're standing in front of them and the only way in and out is the door that's standing behind you, you're putting yourself in harm's way. Get out of the way, universal sign, palms up, door's there, go. They will leave because they are as concerned and jacked up as you are when you come face to face. Let them go. Do not be a hero. Your safety is more important than anything else. Back away from the situation. Make as much noise, attract attention to yourself. Yeah, as I said to some people, phones are wonderful. So you're in a situation, you can take a picture. I'm going to take your picture. Good, you took a picture. You're probably going to get punched in the nose too, because you've taken it in such a blatant, overt way. They realize that's evidence against them. If you can covertly take a picture, perfect. If you have a security system in place where you can snap a picture without knowing that you're taking a picture, fantastic evidence to have. Next one. As I said, you guys live in a beautiful, safe spot. Physical altercations are very, very rare, but they can happen. The best thing I would never suggest unless you're trained in self-defense or martial arts is to get involved in a situation. Remove yourself from it, strengthen numbers, go to a place where there's people and reassess the situation. Is it a 911? Is it a mental health issue? Have you walked into a domestic dispute, which are very dangerous? Okay, assess the situation. But removing yourself from any physical altercation is the best solution. Next one. Question and answer.
I will unmute myself at this stage, and
Sure.
I've been watching the questions come through in the chat. So rather than you searching through, Gary,
Yeah.
I'll go back up to the top of the list, and
Okay.
then we'll work our way through. There was a suggestion or an idea of maybe having a police cruiser kept at the traffic circle here on the island, which could
Not going to happen.
Yeah, I know. What if we
I'll
bought
tell you right
one?
now.
What if we bought one?
We just ordered
disguised it
10 new
as-
cars. We just it probably we've tried these things before and they get vandalized,
Yeah.
right? So it's a risk assessment. It's a lot of money for us to have an old car sit there, right? If we've had situations where we had to take people off the island. We have access, I believe the fire hall has a vehicle. If we need to take somebody off the island, often we can either walk them to a certain spot and walk them down to the harbor to the harbor patrol vessel. But you're right, that's been brought up in discussion before, but it's probably not going to work.
Okay, fair enough. And I'm not sure exactly how the 911 system works, but the question about going directly or contacting direct with the RCMP rather than the 911, is there a potential that that gets a quicker response?
Well,
I know that we've talked in the past where the 911 calls themselves are backed up.
yeah. So 911 goes to our e-com center based in Vancouver. That's where they all go. Then they are transferred to the island, and in turn it comes to our detachment. So there's no way to contact the RCMP directly. The non-emergency line does go to our switchboard operator based here in our detachment, but again, that's a non-emergency call. So it's still going to the switchboard, and if the switchboard operator says, yeah, it requires police attendance or further follow-up, it will be transferred to the dispatch center, who in turn will make a file and then give it to a police officer. But there's no way of kind of bypassing it.
Right. Okay, fair enough. A few questions around the campsites. I know you said you'll send us the list of specific sites that are legally available to people. I'm going to twist this question around a little bit. The comment was, we have no washrooms on the island, and why do we have any parks on this list at all? And I would augment that by asking, what's the process to have our parks excluded or exempted from the list?
Yeah, it's a good question. I do not know what the process is, and I don't think it matters whether there's a washroom or not. A lot of the camping, the parks on our in Nanaimo, and there's about 40, to my knowledge, that are accessible for overnight camping. They don't have washrooms. So that's not a prerequisite to do it. It's just making a space available. But yeah, but I will find that information. I'll probably get it to you by the end of the day on what parks are available. And if you guys have an issue, like the city of Nanaimo bylaws will listen to you. You live there. You say, I don't want this park on here for this reason. They don't know the island like you do. You live there 24/7. And there maybe have things have come up. Maybe there's a sensitive plants or other issues. And that information on those designated campgrounds may be dated as well. So I think they would certainly appreciate having some feedback from you on which places people can camp and cannot.
I suspect that will come up in our part 2 of this as we talk about next steps. Because there's been reference to washrooms. We have protected areas where we're trying to do wildflower and Gary oak restoration.
Oh, certainly,
and,
yeah.
So once we see the list of which parks are in, I think we'll probably have a conversation about approaching the city on the idea of exemption.
Yeah.
There's concerns have been expressed about the 45-minute response time. I don't know if you have any further kind of reaction, or would that speed up once you get your boat recommissioned?
No, it won't. 45 minutes is probably what you can expect, is probably the best. Maybe the odd situation where the seas are perfect and as people have come together like this. I just can't see it. You live on an island. It's going to take a while to get there. I just can't, yeah, I just can't see it being much less than 45 minutes. That's a reality. So okay. I would, if you have a situation, you want to think in your mind for an hour, right? So, and I'm seeing some questions come up, and as I talk about safety in numbers, is you have to, if you have a situation that's life-threatening or serious illness or something, ask yourself who's available on the island to assist, and what can we do to protect ourselves until first responders get there. And that's a good thing for debate amongst yourselves.
Yes.
But 45 is, even as I said, South Nanaimo, going code 3, that's going to take 30-35 minutes to get there. And that's on roads. So it's a tough one.
Okay, fair enough. And I know that we will have conversation about how we can work as an island community.
Certainly.
During that first hour while we're waiting for you guys. There was a comment along the way about boat and kayak theft, and you mentioned boats is an issue around PI, so I'll just acknowledge that comment. There's another comment here about, it's not so much crime on the island, but it certainly affects islanders, and that's the vehicle break-ins and vandalism over in the harborfront parkade areas. Where we live here but park our vehicles there. Do you have any insight or thoughts on how best to respond to that, or how do you guys respond to that, or do you?
Yeah, it's an issue. We recognize it's an issue. A lot of the break-ins now are from our homeless population. The area is patrolled by security and through the Port Authority. Our bike patrol members do it on bikes, and our general duty members patrol it as well. So then we do that part. There's also security cameras. Now, flipping around to the other side, the owner of that vehicle, what is in that car? What is visible? If there's anything visible, they will steal it. So is it locked? Do you have an alarm system? Can you put everything away? Can you make it look like the glove box is empty? To empty the glove box of a vehicle, have it open, and to remove the contents. that takes away a lot of the opportunity for people. If you leave even a quarter or a pack of gum in sight, they will steal it. They will break your window, and there's your $400 deductible. And so we've got the security on our side. You're doing what you can, but that's not 100%. The reality is car theft from vehicles are huge. So we know that. We put bait cars down there. We'll never tell you what they are, but we do bait cars. We do covert patrols. We put bait bikes down there all the time. We've had a lot of success with those, and we're just trying to float with it. But it's a real issue, not only in our community, but every community.
All right. Changing speeds a little bit more to the emergent episode that's in process. The question is, what is considered to be reasonable force if required on behalf of an islander?
Yeah, it's a great question. So you're in a situation where you're confronted by somebody who, say, breaking into your house. There's no reasonable opportunity for you to remove yourself from the situation, and you're confronted with somebody. You can protect yourself. You can protect yourself. You can protect your family. You can protect your home. Question is how you protect it. So reasonable force is that what would somebody else do based with the same circumstances? How would they react? Is someone breaking into your home, you picking up a gun and shooting them, is that reasonable force? The courts will say no. Someone breaking into your house and you're a 6'2" male, 220 pounds, martial arts trainings, and you've been working in law enforcement for 25 years, and you take a baseball bat against somebody who's 5'6", 120 pounds, soaking wet, and you hit them 4, 5, 6 times with the baseball bat, a reasonable person will say that is not reasonable force. The better way to look at it is what force is enough to stop the situation. Maybe I hit him once with a bat, hit him on the leg or something, and enough to scare him. Or I used my voice and I said, get the heck out of here. It's called verbal judo. Or you surrounded the person with 3 or 4 people and you said, no, you're not going into this house. You're out of here. Go. There's your out. That might be considered reasonable. So I never want to get into the life or death situations because they are so rare, so extreme. But reasonable is another situation. So say somebody breaks into your house, middle of the night, you hear the door slam. You're sleeping in the house with your wife and maybe your kids or not, maybe just yourself, doesn't matter. This person, and the first thing that you smell is booze. Person comes to your house, they've got a slurred speech. And they're talking about Carol. Where's Carol? Where's Carol? So obviously they don't even know where they are, but you're scared to death because they broke into your house. And you pick up a baseball bat and you whack that guy 3 or 4 times and he falls on the ground. He gets up. He still hasn't swung at you, but maybe he's swinging at you now. And you say, get the heck out of here. He starts running out of the house and you chase him. You hit him 3 or 4 more times and he falls and significantly hurts himself. You might be looking at charges. So you really have to assess exactly what's happening to your situation and was the force necessary and reasonable to stop the threat. We could do what ifs and what ifs, but I could do a couple more, but I think you kind of get the picture.
Yeah, that gives us a good sense. And I'm going to try to pick up a couple more of the comments here. And we're at about 10 to 2. And so I'm going to take the temperature of the group in a moment here. There's a quick idea that Bruce posted that I think is maybe a good one. In terms of when officers come over to the island, either responding to a call or just on a patrol, wondering whether it's possible for you guys to get copies, or sorry, a copy of the key to the city vehicle. Because there is a city vehicle over here all the time, and it would be available to get you to wherever you're going on the island a bit quicker.
I will look into that, but I think we have a key in our detachment also.
Okay. Okay, fair enough.
I'll double check. I'll let Peter know when I get those designated campgrounds.
Okay. I'll point out to people, if folks have not been reading the chat, there's a very good comment there. I want to acknowledge Carol Weber wrote a nice lengthy comment about their experience recently with the home invasion. And a number of comments trailing after that about the importance of us working together as a community to help each other in situations like that. Maybe, let's see, I'm just scrolling down to the bottom here.
Jim, I'll just stop you
Yes.
for a second. Is
Yes.
there an overall consensus that people think that we can get there quicker?
I would say that's generally a sense that it should be possible to get here quicker. And what folks are comparing it to is how long does it take them the water travel between? You know, it's about 10 minutes on the boat across. So you take that out of the equation, out of the 45 minutes. So that means you've got 35 minutes from wherever down to the boat. And so I think there's a sense that that 35-minute response could be tightened up.
But that 10-minute travel by boat, so then you'd have to take into consideration, you're leaving your home, you're prepping to leave your home, you're walking to the boat, then you're walking off the boat. Okay, so I would like to be able to say it could be, yes, because I realize it could be significantly less if we had a perfect situation, but 45 would be the average.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask just one final question that just came in, and people continue, if you've got questions while I'm doing this, continue to type away in the chat, because we're going to capture those and make sure that we've covered all the issues eventually.
Okay.
But one last sort of a wrap-up thing about I know there's always turnover over in your shop, just as there is in any organization. I wonder to what extent the officers over there are given any kind of orientation or training about Protection Island. When they come over here, there has been sometimes a sense that maybe they don't quite know where they're going. They don't quite know how best to slide into helping with a situation that might be in process where neighbors are maybe rallying. So is there any kind of an orientation or training provided about our specific environment over here?
I think that's a great question. I don't think there's any orientation. I think it's a tabletop saying we got an island here. This is how we get to it. And these are the resources available and how many people live there. But to put boots on the ground would be, I think, a fantastic idea. And I'll bring that up. That's a great point.
Yeah, and I, speaking on behalf of Islanders, I know there'd be many people who'd be willing to participate in that to help.
Yeah, for sure. Great idea.